The chains of silence. The marketplace was alive with noise, but in the center of it all, one girl stood in silence. Shackles clung to her wrists and ankles, heavy iron that bit into her pale skin. She was small compared to the other slaves, her thin frame wrapped in torn cloth, her long hair tangled with dust. But her eyes, bright, trembling, and full of fear, betrayed a spirit that refused to break no matter how much her masters tried. The alien crowd pressed forward, tall figures with scales, others with tusks and some with eyes that glowed in the dark. They shouted, hissed, and argued in dozens of languages, their voices mixing into a storm of greed. Tonight was special. Tonight they would witness the auction of a rare prize, an alien slave girl captured from the border world, someone said. On the wooden stage, the auctioneer raised his clawed hand for silence. His voice cut through the air like a blade. "Behold!" he cried, pulling the chain hard. The girl stumbled forward and fell to her knees. A ripple of laughter rose from the crowd. "She is young. She is rare. She is yours if you can pay." The crowd cheered. Coins, gems, and glowing chips were waved in the air. The girl kept her eyes down, her heart pounding. She knew what fate awaited her. Whispers from other slaves had told her enough. Pain, humiliation, and endless work until her body broke. She trembled, but still she would not cry. The auctioneer barked again. "Who dares to bid first?" Voices rose one after another, each higher than the last. The numbers climbed. The girl's stomach sank lower and lower. Every shout felt like another nail sealing her life into a coffin. And then, silence. A shadow moved at the edge of the crowd. A figure stepped forward, tall and human. Gasps erupted from every throat. A human here? Humans were rare in these parts. Many were dead, scattered or forced into hiding. Most aliens thought of them as weak, desperate creatures. But this one was different. His steps were steady, his face calm, his eyes cold as steel. A scar ran down his cheek, and his clothes were simple, dark but clean. He carried no visible weapon, yet the crowd shifted back as he passed. Something in his presence made even the boldest alien hesitate. The auctioneer narrowed his eyes. "And who might you be, stranger?" The man's voice was low but strong enough to carry. "I am a buyer." The crowd erupted in laughter. "A human dares to bid?" One alien sneered. "He must be mad," shouted another. But the man did not flinch. He walked to the front, his gaze never leaving the trembling girl. She lifted her head for a moment and froze. His eyes met hers. For the first time in her life as a slave, she saw no cruelty there, only something strange, something she could not name. The auctioneer smirked. "Do you even have the coin to pay, human?" Without a word, the man reached into his coat and pulled out a pouch. He poured strange, glowing shards into the auctioneer's clawed hand. The stones pulsed with light, each one humming with power. The crowd gasped. These were no ordinary gems. The auctioneer's greed drowned out his doubt. His wide grin revealed sharp teeth. "Deal!" he roared, lifting the girl's chain and thrusting it into the human's hand. The girl stumbled again, falling at the stranger's feet. The chain rattled, and the weight of her fate grew heavier than ever. She dared not look up. But then, something happened that froze the entire marketplace. The human crouched low, bringing his face close to hers. His voice was barely a whisper, meant for her alone. "Stand," he said. "Not behind me. Beside me." The girl's heart skipped. She looked up, confusion in her eyes. His expression was unreadable, but his tone carried no cruelty. No command to kneel. No order to obey. Instead, it was an invitation. The crowd erupted into chaos. What is he doing? Is he mad? "Slaves do not walk free. Kill him before he shames us all." The alien masters hissed in fury, but none moved forward. Something about this human's calm defiance kept them frozen. The girl, trembling, slowly rose to her feet. The chain clinked between them, but for the first time she felt something she had never known, the faint taste of hope. The human rose too, his hand firm on the chain. He turned to the crowd, his voice steady. "She is mine now," the auctioneer sneered. "Then take her, fool. She is your curse." The man gave no answer. He pulled gently on the chain, and the girl followed. Step by step they left the stage. Step by step they vanished into the maze of streets beyond the marketplace. Behind them, the alien crowd buzzed with whispers. No one understood why a human would buy a slave. No one understood why he treated her differently. But one thing was certain. This night would be remembered. And for the girl, chained yet walking beside him, a storm of questions filled her mind. Who was this human? What did he want? And why for the first time did she feel her silence begin to break? The human's claim the marketplace slowly faded behind them, but its noise still echoed in the girl's ears. She walked with small, hesitant steps, the iron chain still clinking between her and the man who now owned her. The weight of the collar pressed against her neck, reminding her that nothing had truly changed. She had been sold. She was still property, and yet there was something different. Most masters pulled their slaves like beasts. This human did not. His grip on the chain was light, almost careless, as if he did not need it. He walked slowly, giving her time to keep up. The crowd's laughter, the whispers of disgust, still rang in her head. They had mocked him for buying her, but he had not flinched. He had not spoken a single word to them beyond the deal. Now the silence between them was louder than the crowd had been. Finally, she dared to speak. Her voice was soft, broken from disuse. Why did you take me?" The human did not answer at first. His eyes scanned the street, sharp and calculating, as if searching for threats hidden in the shadows. Only when they turned down a narrow alley did he speak. "Because you should not be here," the girl frowned, confused. "But I am a slave," his jaw tightened. "Not to me." The words struck her like a blow. Her steps faltered and the chain pulled taut. She stared at him wide-eyed. No master had ever spoken like this. No master had ever looked at her as anything but a tool to use and discard. He stopped, turning to face her fully. The dim light of a broken street lamp fell across his scarred face. "Listen carefully," he said. "Out there in front of them, you belong to me. That is how we survive. But when no one is watching, you belong to yourself." Her breath caught in her throat. She wanted to believe him, but the collar around her neck told her it was a lie. Chains did not vanish because of kind words. "You are lying," she whispered. A shadow of a smile touched his lips. "Then test me." Before she could speak again, a sound broke the silence. Heavy footsteps approaching. The girl stiffened, instinctively shrinking back. From the darkness, 3 aliens emerged, their eyes glowing faintly, weapons in their hands. "Human," one of them hissed, his voice thick with hatred. "You have caused trouble." The human moved slightly, pulling the girl behind him. His posture remained calm, but she could feel the tension in his arm like a predator ready to strike. "She is mine," he said, his voice cold. The alien sneered. "Yours? Humans do not own slaves." "You have no right." The girl's heart pounded. This was it. They would kill him, drag her back, and the cruel cycle would begin again. She trembled, waiting for him to break, waiting for him to surrender like all the others. But the human did not. He stepped closer, his gaze unshaken. "I paid the price. By your law, she is mine. Do you dare challenge your own rules?" The aliens hesitated. His words were sharp, cutting into their pride. To break their law in public would be dangerous, even for them. Still, they snarled, circling like wolves. The human leaned slightly toward the girl, his voice low enough for only her to hear. "Do not fear. As long as you stand, you are not broken." The words burned in her chest, lighting a fire she did not know she had. At last, with a hiss of frustration, the alien stepped back into the shadows. "Watch your back, human," one spat. "Your life will not last long here." When they were gone, the girl let out a breath she had not realized she had been holding. Her knees nearly gave way. You challenged them." "For me." The human turned and began walking again, pulling the chain gently so she would follow. "I challenged no one. I only reminded them of their own rules. Sometimes that is enough." She hurried to match his steps. Questions swirled in her mind like a storm. Who was he? Why was he risking his life for her? And most of all, what did he truly want? At last she asked the question that weighed heaviest on her heart. "What will you do with me?" He stopped once more, looking at her with eyes that seemed to pierce straight through. His answer came slowly, each word heavy with meaning. "I will give you something no one else has given you." Her breath caught. "What?" "Choice." The girl froze. For a moment, the world around her disappeared. The chains, the collar, the dirt beneath her feet, all of it faded, replaced by the echo of that single word. Choice. No one had ever spoken it to her before. No one had ever suggested it was hers to claim. And in that moment, as they walked deeper into the unknown city, she realized something terrifying and wonderful. This human was not like anyone else. He did not act like a master. He did not speak like a master. And that meant he was dangerous not just to the world around them, but to her silence, to her fear, to everything she had been forced to accept. For the first time, the alien slave girl wondered if her chains could truly break. Whispers of rebellion. The city was a maze of steel and shadows. Towers stretched high, their broken lights flickering in the night. The human walked with steady steps, the alien girl close beside him. The chain between them rattled softly, a sound that once meant despair. But now, with every step, the sound seemed to carry something new. Questions, possibilities, whispers of change. The girl could not stop thinking about his words. Choice. He had said it as if it was something she could touch, something real. But how could choice exist for someone like her? She had been born in chains. She had seen her people beaten, sold, and discarded like scraps. Choice was a dream, not a truth. Yet the human carried himself as if he believed it. They passed alien merchants closing their stalls. Eyes followed them, full of curiosity and suspicion. Some laughed quietly, others spat in disgust. A human buying a slave, such a thing had never happened here. Whispers grew in the streets. Whispers that spread quickly like sparks carried by the wind. Have you heard? One alien hissed as they passed. A human bought a slave girl. Impossible. They say he defied the enforcers. They say, he walks without fear. The girl lowered her gaze, but her ears burned. All around them, voices carried fragments of the story. Her story. His story. Already it was growing larger than them. Finally, when the streets grew empty, she dared to ask again. Why are you doing this? The human's eyes scanned the rooftops, always alert, always searching. Because someone has to. That is not an answer, she whispered. He stopped, turning to her with a look that made her knees weak. His voice was quiet but steady like stone. If no one defies them, they win. If no one stands, then we all kneel. Do you understand? The girl shook her head. She wanted to, but fear wrapped around her heart like cold iron. You cannot fight them. They are too many. They are too strong. A shadow of a smile crossed his lips. So they believe. He started walking again, guiding her into a narrow passage between broken walls. At the end of it, an old door creaked open, revealing a dark, ruined safe house. Dust covered the floor. The air smelled of rust and forgotten battles. The girl stepped inside hesitantly. What is this place? The human dropped the chain from his hand, letting it clatter to the ground. She froze, staring at it in disbelief. No master had ever let go before. This, he said, is a place where voices were once free. Her heart raced. She bent slowly, touching the chain. It was still cold, still heavy, but his hand was no longer on it. For the first time, she held it by her own choice. She looked at him, confused. Why trust me? I could run. You could, he agreed, lowering himself onto a broken chair. But you will not. Her lips parted in shock. How do you know? His eyes narrowed, thoughtful. Because you are still here. The silence stretched, broken only by the hum of distant machines outside. She clenched her fists around the chain. Part of her wanted to run, to disappear into the city and never look back. But another part, deep, hidden, wanted to stay, wanted to hear more. He leaned forward, his voice dropping. There are others, slaves, refugees, even some among the aliens. They whisper in secret. They wait for a sign, her breath caught. A sign of what? Rebellion. The word hit her like fire. It was dangerous, forbidden. She had heard stories of uprisings crushed, of entire families erased from existence. To speak of rebellion was to invite death. She shook her head quickly. That is madness, his gaze never wavered. Madness is kneeling until the end of time. Madness is believing chains are stronger than will. She backed away, her chest tight. You will be killed. They will hunt you. They already do, he said calmly. The girl trembled. His certainty terrified her. And yet, beneath the terror, something else stirred. A spark she had buried long ago when she learned that hope was pain. Her voice cracked. And me? Why tell me this? He stood, his shadow stretching across the cracked wall. Because you asked why. Because you are not broken. Because they fear what you could become. Her throat tightened. Fear clashed with a feeling she could not name. He was offering her something no one ever had. More than freedom, more than survival. He was offering her the chance to fight back. She wanted to scream at him, to say it was impossible. Yet deep inside, a whisper rose. What if he is right? Outside, footsteps echoed faintly. The human stiffened. pulling her close to the wall. Voices drifted through the alley, harsh and angry. Enforcers, searching. The girl's heart pounded. She expected him to panic, to hide in fear, but instead he leaned close to her ear and whispered words that chilled and thrilled her all at once. Stay quiet. Listen well. Tonight you will see why they fear us, and in that moment, as shadows passed outside the broken door, the girl realized something terrible and beautiful. She had stepped into a storm far greater than herself. The whispers of rebellion were no longer just stories. They were real. They had begun. The unthinkable act. The safe house was dark, its walls cracked, its air heavy with dust. The girl sat in a corner, hugging her knees, the chain still coiled around her wrists. The human paced slowly across the room, his steps careful, his ears tuned to the sounds outside. The enforcers had passed for now, but the danger had not. The girl's eyes followed him. He moved like someone who had lived in danger all his life. His silence was not fear, it was calculation. She wondered again who he was and why he had chosen her. Finally, he stopped and turned toward her. In his hand was a small metal tool, something she had not noticed before. He crouched in front of her, his scarred face close, his eyes calm but sharp. "Give me your wrists," he said. She flinched, pulling back. "Why?" His voice was steady. "Because you will not wear these chains any longer." Her heart leapt, but doubt struck just as quickly. You cannot. They belong to my master now." "To you," his eyes hardened. "No. They belong to no one." Before she could argue, he reached forward, gripping the iron shackle around her wrist. She gasped, but his touch was not cruel, it was firm, precise. He slid the tool into the lock, twisting with quick skill. The metal groaned. Sparks flew. Then, with a crack, the shackle snapped open. The girl froze, staring at her wrist. For the first time in her life, her skin was free of iron. The weight was gone. She lifted her hand slowly, trembling, as if afraid the chain would reappear. Her voice broke. How did you do that?" The man's lips curved slightly. "I've broken many chains." She watched as he moved to the other wrist. Her breath quickened. Every sound of grinding metal echoed in her chest. Then snap! The second shackle fell away. The girl pressed her hands together, rubbing the raw skin. Her eyes filled with tears she did not understand. She wanted to thank him, but no words came. The human stood, taking the broken chains in his hands. He walked to the center of the room where an old fire pit lay cold. With calm precision, he struck a spark, feeding it with scraps of wood until flames licked the air. Then, before her eyes, he cast the chains into the fire. The iron hissed, glowing red as the flames consumed them. The girl gasped, stepping forward. "What are you doing?" "If they see, they will see nothing," he cut in, his voice firm. "And if they do, let them fear it." The chains twisted, blackened, and broke apart in the fire. The girl's knees weakened. Never had she seen such defiance. Never had she seen anyone destroy the very symbol of slavery in plain sight. Her whisper trembled in the room. "Why risk this and for me?" The human's gaze stayed fixed on the fire. His face was hard, but his voice softened. "Because you deserve to know what it feels like to stand without chains." She stared at him, unable to speak. For so long she had been nothing but property, an object passed from one cruel hand to another. Now for the first time she felt something she could not name. It was terrifying. It was beautiful. But before the moment could settle, a sound cut through the silence. Footsteps. Heavy. Many. The human's head snapped toward the door. He motioned for her to stay low, his eyes sharp. He pulled a knife from his boot, a blade worn but deadly. The girl's heart thundered. She dropped to her knees, pressing against the wall, her body trembling. Shadows moved outside the cracks in the door. Harsh voices echoed, "Search inside. The human is here." The door burst open. Enforcers stormed in, tall, armored, their weapons gleaming. Their eyes locked on the girl, then on the human standing calmly before the fire. The leader snarled, "You dare burn their chains?" The human did not move. His blade caught the firelight. His voice was ice. "I dare." The room exploded with violence. The first enforcer lunged. The human sidestepped, striking fast. His knife slashed, his fist cracked bone. Another came and he spun low, driving steel into flesh. The girl pressed her hands over her mouth, her wide eyes following every movement. He fought like a storm, silent, precise, unrelenting. But they were many. Blows struck his side, blood stained his shirt. Still, he did not fall. The girl's chest heaved. Fear warred with something stronger, anger. She saw the fire, the broken chains within it. She saw him bleeding, still standing for her. Something inside her broke free. She grabbed a loose stone from the floor. Her body trembled, but she stood. When an enforcer turned toward her, she screamed and hurled the stone with all her strength. It struck his face, making him stagger. The human seized the opening, driving his blade deep. Their eyes met, hers wild with shock, his burning with approval. "You see?" he said through clenched teeth. "You are not weak." The girl's hands shook, but a fierce heat filled her chest. She had fought back. For the first time in her life, she had fought back. The surviving enforcers pulled their wounded from the ground, snarling. "This is not over, human. The masters will hear of this." They fled into the night, their threats echoing in the distance. Silence fell again. The fire crackled. The broken chains glowed faintly, turning to ash. The girl sank to her knees, staring at her empty wrists, her trembling hands. I fought," she whispered. The human wiped his blade clean, his breathing heavy. He gave her a slow nod. "Yes, and you will again." She looked at him, fear and awe mixing in her eyes. He had done the unthinkable. He had broken her chains, not just with his hands, but with his defiance, and deep inside her, the whispers of rebellion grew louder. The hunt begins. The fire still glowed faintly in the ruined safe house, its smoke curling toward the cracks in the ceiling. The girl sat close, staring at the ashes where her chains had burned. She touched her bare wrists again and again as if testing whether the freedom was real. The human leaned against the wall, his side wrapped in a torn piece of cloth to slow the bleeding from the fight. His breathing was steady, but the wound was deep. Still, his eyes never closed. He was listening to the city itself. The girl could not stay silent any longer. "They will come back," she whispered. His gaze shifted to her, sharp and calm. "Yes, they will not stop." Her stomach turned. She had seen how slavers punished disobedience. She had seen what happened to rebels. Then why fight them at all? "You cannot win." He pushed away from the wall, standing despite the pain. His voice was quiet, but each word struck like stone. "I do not fight to win. I fight so others remember they can." She stared at him, confused, frightened, and yet drawn to the fire in his eyes. Outside, the night was no longer calm. The city stirred like a beast awakened. Enforcers filled the streets, their voices carrying through the dark. Torches and electric lamps cut across alleys, searching. The word had spread fast. A human had broken chains. A human had defied the masters. The hunt had begun. The human doused the fire quickly, covering the last embers with dirt. He motioned for her to follow. "We cannot stay here." She hesitated, fear gripping her chest. But when he moved, she followed. Not because of the chain, there was none now, but because some part of her refused to let him face this storm alone. They slipped into the alleys, their footsteps quiet. The city above was alive with shouts and the pounding of armored boots. The girl whispered, "They are everywhere. How will we escape?" The human glanced back, his eyes narrowing. "We will not escape. We will move where they least expect," she frowned. "And where is that?" "Through them." Her blood ran cold. They turned a corner and froze. A squad of enforcers blocked the street ahead, their armor gleaming, their weapons drawn. The leader pointed, his voice booming. "There, the human and his slave." The girl's heart hammered. She grabbed the human's arm, panic flooding her. "Run, please, we must run." But he did not run. He stepped forward, knife flashing in his hand. His voice carried, calm yet fierce. "I am no one's prey." The enforcers roared and charged. The battle was chaos. The human moved like water, his blade striking, his body twisting to avoid crushing blows. The girl pressed against the wall, her breath caught in her throat. But then one enforcer broke past him, rushing straight at her. Her fear threatened to choke her. She had no weapon, no strength, but her mind flashed back to the stone she had thrown in the safe house. She remembered his words. "You are not weak." Her hands searched the ground, finding a length of rusted pipe. When the enforcer lunged, she swung with all her strength. The metal cracked against his jaw, sending him stumbling. The human seized the moment, finishing the fight with a swift strike. The girl gasped, dropping the pipe. Her hands shook, but her heart pounded with something new. She had done it again. She had fought back. The human's eyes met hers for only a second, filled with something like pride. Then he grabbed her hand. "Move." They ran. weaving through alleys as shouts rose behind them. More enforcers followed, their footsteps echoing. The city had turned into a cage, every street filled with hunters. At last, they ducked into an abandoned tunnel, the air damp and stale. They pressed against the wall as squads stormed past above. The girl collapsed to her knees, gasping for breath. "We cannot keep this up. They will not stop until you are dead." The human crouched beside her, blood on his arm, his voice steady despite the pain. "Then let them come. Every step they take to find me is a step others see." Every whisper grows louder, her eyes widened. "Whispers?" He nodded. "The city watches. Slaves here, workers here, even the master's servants here. Tonight they saw one human defy them. Tomorrow they will wonder if they can do the same." She trembled. "And if they do not?" His gaze was sharp as steel. "Then I die." But not in silence. For a long moment she stared at him. He was bleeding, hunted, and outnumbered. Yet his spirit was unbroken, stronger than any chain. Something stirred deep inside her, stronger than fear. Outside, horns blared. The hunt grew closer. The girl rose to her feet, her fists clenched. "Then I will not be silent either." The human studied her, his scarred face unreadable. At last he gave a slow nod. "Good. Because this is only the beginning." In the distance, the city roared with the fury of the masters. The hunt was far from over. But for the first time in her life, the girl no longer felt like prey. The secret revealed. The tunnel was damp and endless, its walls dripping with water that echoed in the silence. The girl followed close behind the human, her bare feet splashing softly in shallow puddles. Every step felt heavy with fear, yet also alive with something new. Purpose. The human walked with steady determination, though his wound still bled beneath the torn cloth. He carried no torch, yet he seemed to know the path by instinct, turning at each corner as if guided by memory. Finally, they stopped in a hidden chamber where the tunnel widened. The air here was still, heavy with the smell of rust and dust. The human lowered himself against the wall, breathing hard. The girl knelt beside him, her hands trembling as she reached for the cloth on his side. "You are hurt. Let me see." He gave her a long look but did not push her away. Slowly, she unwrapped the bandage. The cut was deep, crimson staining his skin. She tore strips from her own ragged dress and pressed them firmly against the wound. He flinched but did not cry out. "You have done this before." She nodded faintly. "I tended the wounded in the slave pits. Those who survived the beatings," her voice grew small. "Most did not." Silence filled the chamber, broken only by the drip of water and the sound of her breath. At last she dared to ask the question that burned inside her. "Why me?" The human's eyes opened slowly. His voice was low, but each word carried weight. "Because you still ask questions. Many slaves stop. They accept the silence. But you still search for answers." Her throat tightened. She wanted to argue, to deny, but she knew he was right. Even when she had been beaten, she had wondered why. Even when she was chained, she had dreamed of more. She whispered, "But questions do not break chains." His gaze locked with hers. "No. But questions are where rebellion begins." The word made her flinch. Rebellion. It was forbidden, cursed. Yet when he spoke it, it sounded less like madness and more like truth. Her voice shook. "You are only one man. What can you do against all of them?" His lips curved slightly. "I am not one man." Confusion filled her face. "What do you mean?" He leaned forward, his voice dropping to a whisper. "There are others. Humans scattered across the stars. Not all are dead. Not all are broken. We move in shadows, in secret. We fight in places they think are safe. We strike when they least expect it." Her eyes widened. "A resistance?" He nodded. "Yes, and I am part of it." The girl's heart raced. She had heard rumors in the slave pits. Wild stories of humans who refused to kneel, who attacked slave ships and freed captives. She had never believed them. They were stories to give false hope, nothing more. Yet here he was, living proof. She swallowed hard. "And me? Why bring me into this?" The human studied her, his eyes sharp, weighing her as though searching her soul. "Because you have a choice now. You can disappear, hide, and live quietly with your freedom, or you can rise and help me." Her breath caught. "Help you? I am nothing. I cannot fight as you do." He shook his head slowly. "You are wrong. You already fought. In the safe house. In the streets. Do you remember how it felt?" She did. The weight of the stone in her hand. The shock of striking her oppressor. the heat that burned in her chest when she realized she was not helpless. She shivered, his voice grew stronger. That fire inside you? That is what they fear most. Not my knife, not my strength, but the fire in those they thought were broken. Her hands trembled. She looked at her wrists, at the scars where the shackles once bit into her skin. They still hurt. But the chains were gone. Tears filled her eyes. If I help you, I will die. The human leaned closer, his expression fierce. If you do nothing, you will die a slave. Which death do you choose? The question struck her harder than any whip. She could not answer. Her heart screamed to live, but her soul whispered of something greater. For a long time, silence filled the chamber. Finally, her voice came, small but unshaken. I will not kneel again. A slow nod came from him as though he had been waiting for those words. Then you are ready. The girl's fear did not vanish, but it shifted. It became fuel. She had chosen, truly chosen, for the first time in her life. But their moment ended as shouts echoed through the tunnel. Lights flickered in the distance. The enforcers were hunting again, their voices bouncing off the stone. The human gripped his knife, rising to his feet with grim resolve. He glanced at her, his eyes burning with quiet pride. Stay close. The night is far from over. The girl stood beside him, no longer trembling in silence. The hunt was still on, but she was no longer prey, and for the first time she believed she could become more than a survivor. Rise of the Free. The tunnel shook with the sound of boots. The enforcers were coming closer, their voices echoing like thunder. The girl stood beside the human, her body tense, her fists clenched. Fear still lived inside her, but it no longer ruled her. The human gripped his knife, his scarred face calm, his voice steady. When the time comes, do not hide, her heart pounded. What if I fail? His eyes locked with hers. Then rise again. That is what makes us free. Before she could answer, light flared at the end of the tunnel. Shadows grew long as armored figures poured in, their weapons raised. The leader's voice rang out. Human, you will die here, and the girl will return to chains. The girl's blood froze, but the human stepped forward. His voice cut like iron. She will never wear chains again. The enforcers charged. The battle was chaos. Steel clashed, fists struck, blood sprayed across the damp walls. The human fought like a storm, every movement precise, his knife flashing in the dark. But he was outnumbered, and each strike took more from his strength. The girl stood frozen for a moment, watching as the man who had freed her bled for her. Then something inside her snapped. She could not stand still. Not now. She seized a broken pipe from the floor and swung with a cry. The strike caught one enforcer off guard, sending him crashing against the wall. Another turned on her, raising his weapon. She ducked low, fear burning into action, and drove the pipe into his leg. The human finished him with a swift strike. Their eyes met, and for a heartbeat the world stilled. You fight, he said, his voice fierce. Her chest heaved, her arms shaking. I will not be silent. More enforcers fell, but more arrived. The tunnel seemed endless with enemies. The girl's body screamed with exhaustion, but she refused to stop. For every strike she made, for every enemy that fell, a spark lit inside her brighter and brighter. At last, the enforcers began to falter. They had expected a broken slave, not a fighter. They had expected a human who would beg, not one who stood defiant. The leader snarled, stepping forward. His armor gleamed, his weapon a blade longer than her arm. Enough games. The rebellion dies here. He lunged at the human. Their blades clashed, sparks flying in the dark. The fight was brutal. The human's movement slower now from blood loss. The girl watched in terror as the leader pressed harder, forcing him back step by step. No, she whispered. Not like this. Her eyes fell on the broken chain still lying in the corner of the chamber. She snatched it up, its weight familiar, its iron cold. But this time it was not her prison. It was her weapon. With a cry, she swung the chain around the leader's arm. It wrapped tight, pulling his strike off course. The human seized the moment, driving his knife deep into the leader's chest. The enforcer staggered, eyes wide with shock. Then he fell, his weapon clattering to the ground. Silence filled the tunnel. The remaining enforcers looked at their fallen leader, then at the girl standing with the broken chain in her hands. Their faces twisted with fear. Without another word, they fled into the night. The girl dropped the chain, her body shaking. The human leaned heavily against the wall, his breath ragged, but his eyes burned with pride. You see? He said softly. Chains can break. Masters can fall. Tears blurred her vision. She fell to her knees, staring at her scarred wrists, then at the ashes of the fight around them. We did it. We truly did it, the human crouched, gripping her shoulder. This was only the beginning. They will return. They will hunt harder. But tonight they learned something. She lifted her gaze to his. What? That one voice of defiance becomes two, and two becomes many. The girl's breath trembled. She thought of the whispers in the streets, the slaves who had seen, the merchants who had watched. Word would spread. Stories would grow. A slave girl who fought, a human who defied. She rose slowly, her body weak but her spirit blazing. For the first time she felt tall. Not prey, not property. Something else. Something free. The human gave her a faint, tired smile. You're ready now, she shook her head. No, not ready, but willing. His eyes glimmered and he nodded once. That is enough. They stepped out of the tunnel together into the first light of dawn. The city loomed ahead, broken towers rising into the pale sky. Somewhere out there, masters sharpened their blades. Enforcers plotted their revenge. But whispers were already moving through the streets, whispers that could not be silenced. The girl stood beside the human, no longer trembling. The fire in her chest burned brighter than fear. She was not a slave. She was not silent. She was the first spark of something greater. And as the sun rose, painting the ruins in gold, she knew one truth with all her heart. The rise of the free had begun,